Now to Mexico, and Claudia Sheinbaum has swept to victory in Sunday's presidential election, making history as the first woman to hold the office. As the hand-picked successor of leftist President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the former mayor of Mexico City was always a favourite to win. The president-elect now faces some big challenges, including migration, relations with the United States, and the country's rampant drugs-related violence.
Mexico's biggest election in history has produced a unique winner. Claudia Sheinbaum is set to become the country's next president. Cheers and jubilation decorated her celebration speech. The former mayor pledged an office that leads for all.
We will govern for everyone, men and women, but as a humanistic principle of our movement, for the good of everyone, first take care of the poor.
Her win has resonated with the public.
We are proud that we are giving way to a woman to govern us. You can see that she is well prepared, and that is very satisfying.
I feel very happy, very proud, and fully represented as a woman, because for the first time in 200 years, we have a female president.
Sheinbaum looks set for a landslide victory over her main opponent. Xochitl Galvez, a businesswoman from an indigenous background, conceded defeat with a final request.
I would like to emphasize that my recognition of the results comes with a firm demand for solutions and outcomes to the serious problems the country faces.
At least one person was killed at a polling station in Puebla State, and more than 30 presidential candidates were assassinated ahead of Sunday's vote, making it the most violent election in Mexico's history. Tackling crime will be a top mandate for Claudia Sheinbaum's office, but she also addressed other major concerns for Mexico's public.
We will be austere. Corruption won't come back, nor the privileges, nor the presidential airplane, or the retirement pensions for former presidents, or the presidential state guard.
Mexico's constitution only allows one-term presidencies. This means Claudia Sheinbaum has 6 years to take forward the issues on her agenda when her time in office begins on October 1st.
Jason Marczak is Senior Director of the Atlantic Council's Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Welcome to DW. Give us an idea, if you would, of who Mexico's first female president is. What's her background?
Well, President-elect Sheinbaum was head of government of Mexico City. She served as Minister of the Environment in Mexico City. But also importantly, she's a scientist by profession. She's a technocrat. She has a PhD at the UNAM in Mexico. So she is somebody who will approach the presidency from a very pragmatic, technical perspective. And I'll tell you, when I first met with her team when she was head of government in Mexico City, they showed me a 220-page plan of government that was put together immediately when she took office as head of government in Mexico City. And my understanding is on a regular basis, perhaps even a weekly basis, she was asking her team to say the extent to which those government plans were being addressed and implemented. So, I expect a president who is incredibly methodical, very detail-oriented, at the same time a president who is, the hand-picked successor to the current president, who is very popular and will largely continue, as your report showed, with the policies of President Lopez Obrador.
And from the outside, it looks as though domestic security, especially drugs-related violence, is the biggest problem in the president's in-tray. Is it?
Yeah, security, violence were the top issues as part of the campaign. The last presidential debate squarely focused on security. President-elect Sheinbaum has vowed to continue with the security policy of President Lopez Obrador, which is focused on essentially hugs and not bullets, which is to find ways to prevent violence, social programs, education programs. But at the same time, there is going to be a real focus and a real need for the president-elect to be able to extend even beyond some of the policies of the current president, because we've seen homicide rates continue to increase in Mexico under this the previous 6 years. And we saw one of the most violent campaigns in history, as your report showed, with upwards of 30 different candidates, largely at a local level, being killed as part of this the campaign season. So luckily, the weekend was free of major violence. And we didn't see that at the polling stations either. But this is going to be her priority focus, not only for Mexico, but also for the United States, for Mexico's northern neighbor, where security, especially fentanyl trafficking, is a priority in the bilateral relationship.
And so why is cartel violence such an intractable problem in Mexico?
Well, there's been different approaches to try to combat cartel violence over the years in Mexico. Back 20 years ago, the early 2000s, the president at the time had a strategy to try to go after the kingpins. That just resulted in even more violence because the different cartels ended up fighting among each other. It historically goes back to the fact that there are areas of the country that don't have as much support from state security. And also the ways in which state security is divided between the federal government, the local government. Also important to point out the fact that Mexican cartels are no longer just Mexican cartels. Criminal organizations have become transnational criminal organizations. So you see Mexican cartels operating all across the Western Hemisphere, and that gives them further power within Mexico itself.
Okay. Mexico also has a problem with gender-based violence. And so one wonders, is the election of the country's first female president likely to have much of an effect on those disturbingly high gender-based violence rates?
Yeah, well, Phil, I hope so. Right. I mean, I think that Mexico is known as a country that is historically more machista. And so the fact that Mexico now has its first woman president, hopefully that will be a sign writ large across Mexico of the need to respect the rights of women, and Claudia Sheinbaum as well will likely continue with policies at now in the presidency that will address some of the challenges that women have faced. I think there are certain things that can be done at a micro level as well. Things like economic empowerment that helps to reduce gender-based violence, but having those policies so that women have greater ownership over their own lives, and there's less control by the men in the household. That helps to hopefully reduce the gender-based violence that is unfortunately prevalent in Mexico.
Okay, good talking to you. Thanks for that. Jason Marczak from the Atlantic Council.
Thank you very much.
Well, Arturo Sarukhan is a former Mexican ambassador to the United States. He's now president of consulting group Sarukhan and Associates. Welcome to DW. What would you say is the biggest problem facing the president-elect now?
There's no doubt that public security or public insecurity is going to be one of the main challenges she faces. We saw it rear its head in terms of the 34 candidates for elected office that were killed during this presidential cycle. And it's going to be a critical challenge going forward. She has promised to maintain Lopez Obrador's policies in the realm of public security, but that poses a huge challenge because that paradigm seems to be broken. And more importantly, she will have to also tackle the issue of US-Mexico collaboration, which was eviscerated under the current president.
Okay, so she is Manuel Obrador's. She is his heir, his hand-picked successor. So how then does she close those gaps and stay faithful to her mentor?
That's the big question everyone's asking at this point, because of the important victory last night, it's going to be very hard for her to wean herself from the shadow that López Obrador will cast over her and over the country. And so how does she carve her own path forward, while at the same time, as she has promised to do, double down on the legacy, the public policy legacy of the current president?
Okay, so the president, you talked about his looming shadow there. Will he go quietly into the night, or do you expect to see the current president as a sort of backseat driver in the new administration?
I think he will certainly go quietly because of the results last night in Mexico City, but he will be a force to contend with. He will be in his ranch in southern Mexico. He has promised to, retire from public life, but the fact that he has such a close relationship with the president-elect, the fact that Morena has won such a resounding victory, the fact that they are potentially on track to obtain a supermajority in Congress, which is very relevant because that would allow them to change the Constitution. I think it will be hard for the outgoing president to sort of stay mum and stay quiet and not to be poking his finger into policy decision-making that the president-elect will be implementing in the coming months. And remember, we also have this horrendously long transition in Mexico. Elections were yesterday, but Claudia Sheinbaum will not be assuming office until October the 1st.
Much is being made of the fact that Mexico has chosen a woman to lead it, and indeed the choice on the ballot was between two women. What does that tell us, if anything, about where a country with such a reputation for macho-ness is now?
Well, I think that certainly it's critically important that this glass ceiling has been broken in Mexico. I joke with my American friends here in D.C. that we've broken that glass ceiling before they've done. But it doesn't make the big challenge of domestic violence, gender parity issues, and more importantly, femicides, which have been going through the roof these last years, go away. The challenge for Mexico's first female president is that now she will have to walk the walk and really move the needle on these issues which still profoundly affect women in Mexico today.
Good talking to you. Thank you for guiding us through that. Arturo Sarukhan from Sarukhan Associates.
Joining me now is Gema Kloppe-Santamaría, Assistant Professor of History and International Affairs at George Washington University. So much is being made about the fact that Mexico now has a woman president. Is that a triumph for Mexican feminism?
Absolutely. I think we do need to put the victory of Claudia Sheinbaum and the fact that the second strongest candidate was also a woman, Xochitl Gálvez, in the context of the struggle and the fight that feminist movement, the women's movement have put forward for decades in Mexico. So I do believe we need to understand this in the context of the feminist movement, the strength of the women's movement. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that the new elected president will necessarily have a gender perspective in her policies, but what we can be hopeful about that.
So let's talk about her agenda moving forward. Now, as we heard in the report there has been incredible violence in this election campaign. So what should she be doing, or what could she be doing to tackle the problem of violence in Mexico?
Certainly. Security and violence are definitely the top challenges in Mexico, or some of the most important things affecting people in their everyday lives, including questions of homicides, femicides, the killing of women because of their gender, disappearances, extortions, robberies. These are all very, very strong challenges. I would say that, what the new coming president would have to do is addressing the social and institutional roots of violence and crime in Mexico. So far, she has indicated the willingness to do some of that by continuing with some of the social programs of the current presidency, and also with strengthening the prosecutor's office and the capacity to investigate of the institutions in Mexico. However, she has also pledged to continue with the militarization of public security, which has raised concerns amongst human rights organizations, civil society organizations, and also the feminist movement.
So it appears what you're saying is we will see some of the current policies continued, but the current and outgoing President Manuel Lopez Obrador has largely avoided direct confrontation with the drug cartels. Are we likely to see a different tact from the president-elect?
Yeah, I would say that the policy and the approach of the current government has been mixed. I know it has been very popular to say that his government promoted hugs and no bullets, but actually, if you look closely at his actions, the military have continued to participate in public security functions. There have been confrontations on the ground with criminal groups. The problem is that it hasn't been a cohesive policy. So I think we will continue to see some of these actions that unfortunately are not very cohesive, that on the one hand promote the militarization of public security, they also promote like punitive approaches to crime, and while at the same time sort of like abandoning certain areas or saying that they are going to promote social programs, but those social programs so far haven't shown successful results. So I would say it's a very mixed legacy that Lopez Obrador leaves behind, and we're likely to see that with Sheinbaum's presidency.
That was Gema Kloppe-Santamaría from George Washington University. Thank you very much for your time and for your analysis.
Thank you.